Alrighty, guys. So, I am back from Gen Con, the world's biggest tabletop gaming convention. And I've got some stuff that I want to talk about regarding it. So, I went with my father, my brother, and his wife. This is the second time we have gone, so we had a little bit of an idea as to how to make the most of it, but there is definitely some room for improvement in the future. So for the majority of the con, we broke up into two groups. I was mostly with my dad, and the con itself, it was pretty packed. Apparently there were 70,000 plus attendees, and for those 8 hours that the exhibit hall was open, you would be within 1 foot of at least like 3 other people the entire time. There was times that the exhibit hall was like so incredibly densely packed that it genuinely felt like being herded like cattle. It was impossible to have any space around you. It was one of those situations where if you stood still for more than 4 Mississippi seconds, someone would inevitably start a conversation with you. Whether it was someone trying to sell you a product or something, or if it was someone trying to network with you or whatever. Because everyone's working on their games and nerd projects there, so everyone's got stuff that they want to talk about with you. Personally, I had some mixed feelings regarding this atmosphere. Because on the one hand, I am generally the type of person to try to avoid talking to strangers if I can possibly help it. But on the other hand, that's mostly because other people only ever talk about lame things like that I don't care about, like sports and the weather. And everyone here was actually just talking about really cool stuff. And there's this like innate sort of evolutionary desire that humans have from back when they were monkeys to be accepted by all the other monkeys. And like that is a kind of feeling that I do generally feel like I am missing from my day-to-day life. But like the unfiltered sense of community that I got from this convention was just this raw primal force that I just absolutely loved experiencing. And that sense of community and the identity and that level of acceptance was an almost universally positive experience. But I do just have a quick little tangent that I want to go on. So, for a little bit of context, my dad is like maybe 1 step above average dad nerd level. Like if average dad nerd level is being into World War II, my dad also likes some nerd properties that are 1 degree of separation away from World War II, like Star Trek and Warhammer. He's not really like a Magic the Gathering guy or D&D guy or anything like that. But anyway, relatively soon into the first day of the con, we stepped outside for some fresh air, and there was this guy waiting for his shuttle with like bags full of stuff. And he was the first other like attendee that we had an extended conversation with. Anyway, my dad asked him like, "So, what did you pick up?" And he starts showing off these hundreds of dollars worth of various collections of art prints that he bought that all depicted buxom, scantily clad anime girls. Which I'm not gonna judge the guy. You know, I don't know him. For all I know, number 1 thing he likes is anime. Second thing he likes is he's a champion of third wave feminism. But I can judge that moment because I experienced it. And in that moment, I felt shame and embarrassment, mostly because it was such like a poignant reminder as to how people on the outside view people who identify with nerd culture, you know, such as myself. And it made me realize just how much ground we've got to cover to sort of reclaim our, not even to reclaim, but just to like get out of that image. But on the hopeful side, like another thing that everyone views nerds as is very, very smelly, which I can personally attest to as someone who has attended their fair share of MTG Grand Prix and SCG Opens. But I am happy to announce that like the amount of Nurgle's rot that I could smell coming off of other people was surprisingly pretty minimal. So there's definitely some evidence to show that progress in changing our image is possible. But anyway, speaking of body odor, let's talk Dungeons and Dragons. So D&D 5.5, the new player's handbook, was unveiled at Gen Con. That was pretty cool to get a chance to check out. So here's just like a quick little summary of my thoughts regarding the new D&D edition. In a general, in a vacuum, by themselves, I am a fan of 95% of the changes that they made. Just about every single thing seems both like better balanced, better from a playability standpoint. Generally, like abilities are simplified and made more clear and made more relevant. And like the classes that were otherwise not very interesting were given some more stuff to make them more neat and cool. All in all, it seems like it's all changes that'll make for a more fun game. All of that having been said, though, even though I like the changes themselves, I'm not particularly fond of the philosophy behind the reasoning for those changes. A lot of the changes very much so come across as preparing the game to make it ready for digital implementation. Like I definitely got the palpable sense that they're changing things to get ready for D&D Beyond. Abilities seem to be reworked so that you can like interface with them through a drop-down menu. Druid, for example, wild shape has been changed so that instead of being able to change into any animal or any animal you've seen or any animal you've interacted with or however you want to handle it, now wild shape is specifically you choose 4 animals that you can wild shape into. Which I dislike that seems like they are stepping away from the sort of emergent Ludo narrative sort of design direction, and they are stepping towards making everything tailored towards ease of play, which I'm not crazy about. It does seem like they are stepping back in that sort of 4E direction, and like the rebalancing of every class and making every class much more versatile, being able to like allow any class to sort of do anything. It kind of feels like it's serving the function of like homogenizing the identities of all the classes. It kind of makes them feel less unique, which I don't really care for. Overall, I do think 5.5 is going to be a better game than 5E, but I still very much so am in grumble grognard mode. I don't really like about what these changes say about the direction that D&D is moving towards. Okay, another thing. So, got a chance to try out some new games. So I've got some new games that I'm gonna give a shot, hopefully at some point, to make some videos for. First up is BattleTech. My brother got me some of the like starter set for BattleTech, and I like the idea of it. This like super in-depth mech game where you can like shoot each other and you'll track the specific like internal components that are destroyed or damaged. I really like that the game is super hyper customizable, so much so that there's not even any kind of competitive scene for people to steal meta lists from and to suck the joy out of the game. But the fact that it's so incredibly customizable means there's just so many rules for the game that do exist for you to pick and choose from, for you to use. It seems very, very difficult to actually just jump into the game, especially because it seems like you're going to have to waste a lot of time by learning tons and tons of rules that you end up deciding that you don't even like and don't even plan on using anyways. So, like, I do want to try it. And the one thing that I do know for certain is I want to try making a terrible army. And by that, I mean, I love the idea of just making an army of tons and tons of infantry just to fight other mechs, which I know that's the whole point of the game, is to use the mechs, since they have the whole what side are you facing, which I'm guessing the point of infantry is you don't really have to bother with that. I really don't know, but I'm gonna try to learn that game. So another game, we got to test out Flesh and Blood. This game made by Magic Pros to be a sort of competitor to Magic, is my personal understanding right now. It mostly seems kind of Magic-esque, except if you only cast instants and sorceries, like if there were no creatures and enchantments and stuff. It seems very similar to Slay the Spire, in that sequencing is everything. But honestly, I kind of really like the absurdity of those mega complicated multiplayer 4-hour long EDH games, where it almost feels like you guys have built this living computer program with how all these permanents are interacting with each other, and have just become this, to compare it to Factorio, like a spaghetti factory of just crazy interactions just bouncing all over the place. And that definitely seems like that's not a thing in like Flesh and Blood, which I understand that that's not everyone's speed. So I'm sure there are plenty of people who do prefer Flesh and Blood. Honestly, I just have to try playing it way more before I give it a fair evaluation. Okay, so some other stuff that we did at Gen Con. So we watched some fan-made or student film-made short films, which I'm not going to go deep on critiquing those films, because making movies is really, really hard, and I'm sure everyone tried their absolute best that they possibly could. I just want to throw this one potential thing out there, which is that if you are going to be making a short film that you expect to be shown in some of these hotel rooms with flat floors, i.e. not theaters where everyone is on the same level, I would just consider putting the subtitles at the top of the screen. Because the whole time, every time there was a movie with subtitles, everyone was like ducking left and right, trying to look past each other's heads to actually be able to read what was going on in the screen. And I get that focal points exist. I get that camera framing is a thing that exists. I understand why it is natural for people to put the subtitles at the bottom of the screen. I'm just saying, just take the practicality into account. Just know the viewing experience, the audience experience. Just consider it, is all I'm saying. Okay, so some other stuff. So my brother went to a bunch of seminars about how to make a career out of partaking in all of this nerd stuff, like running RPGs and making Kickstarters, stuff along those lines. And I also went to one of these seminars. And over the course of our entire stay at Gen Con, we had a lot of conversations about this topic. And so I want to talk about some of the conclusions that I've come to, some of which are only vaguely, tangentially related to this subject, and some of these that are more directly related to this subject. All right, so I'm going to start off with one of the very tangential related ones. So there's a very common sentiment that I see in the comments of the D&D subreddit, which is this idea of the don't bring your real life problems into D&D. Your DM is not your therapist. And every time I see that, I just always think like, this is so sad. What a sort of reductive, superficial view of D&D you must have. The bond between DM and their group is like a shaman and their tribe. And if you've never used D&D as an excuse to play therapist with your friends, you are just sorely missing out. Like, stories, they've got the potential to be so incredibly powerful. Like, the whole concept of culture is almost like synonymous with the idea of the collections of these stories and the interpretations you're supposed to have of them and what that says about life and society as a whole. Like, using stories to challenge their complacencies and to inspire the player, the person, to persevere. Like, genuinely, the stories that you consume, like, can make you a better person. I definitely sincerely believe that. And so a specific thought that I've kind of come to regarding this is specifically about people cheating in D&D, and more broadly, what people get out of D&D. So I specifically, like, in the past, if I had caught someone cheating in a D&D campaign, that would genuinely put a strain on, like, how I view my relationship with that person. Because, like, if that person is willing to lie in something that is as inconsequential as a game, like, what does that mean about when real things are at stake? Like, what does that mean about their honesty when the real things are coming up? And okay, so I'm starting to get to my point here. I have come to realize that, like, people's real lives are stressful enough. D&D is, for a lot of people, their chance to finally actually have 100% total control over their life, even if it is just for a short little amount of time and in Fantasyland. And I think I've finally internalized the rationale for the demand that players seem to have for the power fantasy aspect that they want from D&D. So, like, I've come to realize, well, not come to realize, but I now do truly grok that people have to struggle with moral quandaries all the time, every day. Anytime someone goes to the grocery store, they're making moral and ethical judgments, and sometimes people just want a break from their very complicated lives, and they just want to be told, and they just want to feel that they are awesome for a 3-hour span of time. To put this another way, right, people have already gone through the first 15 steps of the hero's journey throughout the preceding couple of weeks leading up to that D&D session. They've already gone through their trials, their tribulations, and their thresholds. And by the time they get to that D&D session, they are ready to experience those last 2 steps of that hero's journey. They are ready to cash out and get the payoff of all the hardships they've gone through in just their real lives. So this is all to say that I have very much so softened my views on people cheating in games and in D&D. And I now do fully subscribe to that argument of, look, if someone needs to cheat in a game, that's just because they really need this win. So another thing that I have radically changed my views on is the idea of paying for a DM as a service. So again, I thought it was vital to the meaningfulness of D&D as an experience to be intimately familiar with the circumstances of your players so that you can guide them through stories that are like of maximum significance to their very lives. And I kind of considered paying for a DM to really just be this sad dream that with enough capital you can recreate a simulacrum of that sacred bond between shaman and tribe. I've since come to accept that I have been putting way too much weight into that school of thought that I now kind of consider to be a little mawkish. And that when it comes to the evident pragmatic differences between like a paid game and an unpaid game, like paid players actually have some skin in the game when it comes to their willingness to both participate and be an engaged audience member. You know, they have literally, figuratively put their money where their mouth is. Whereas when it comes to unpaid players, their only non-game incentive to fully engage and be entertained by the game is really just with whatever motivation that they kind of decide to bring to the table. And that can be a very mixed bag. So my conclusion here is that I think I'm actually going to give paid DMing a shot. I think I'm gonna finally start the ultra-liberal playthrough of my life.
You're not an ultra-liberal, Harry. Get the fuck out of here. Don't be a retard.
Now just regarding my videos and the channel as a whole, and my thought process towards making these videos. I've realized I've been putting way too much concern into the very act of like putting my voice out there, and worrying if my ideas were even worth sharing with other people. I've got so many videos that like I've never made because I didn't think that my idea was unique enough or well thought of enough to even be worth bother posting. But I think I am past that point now, and I think I'm actually gonna start considering like how do I actually make this channel into something. So I think I've decided I'm gonna actually start writing scripts, and I'm gonna actually get better at editing, actually put time into making thumbnails and stuff. Basically, if you are watching this, then you are going to witness the very moment that my arc as an artist is coming to an end. go ahead and look, and behold a green horse, and his name that sat upon him is Money, and prosperity followed with him. Most importantly, the thing that I've gained out of this Gen Con, just being around swaths of nerd who had a true interest in the same things that I like to make, it has totally revitalized my motivation to actually continue my projects and to actually finish them. Something I've certainly learned about myself is that I do not have that self-fueling furnace of the soul where I will continue to work on something until it matches my vision and my mind. No matter how badly I've tried to convince myself that I am that kind of a person, I really am the kind that needs to feed off of the energy of others to fuel my furnace of motivation. And being surrounded by thousands of like-minded consumers of culture has got to be worth at least a couple months of recharging my battery of passion that I have for this hobby. The second most important thing that I think I got out of Gen Con, though, that it was a pretty good workout. I got at least 20,000 steps in a day, which that's a whole half a traveling day in D&D. That's like 12 miles every day. So if you need some cardio, consider Gen Con. Anyway, the absolute greatest of shout-outs goes out to my dad for making this whole experience possible. I cannot express enough just how much I appreciate you putting this whole thing together and making that happen. So 1 million thank yous to you. All right, that was everything. Goodbye.